Hello, it's Jocelyn Medrick, Executive Director over here at Great Marriages in Sheboygan. Today's event is one of my favorite titles, at least. It's called Love Thinks, not Stinks, Love Thinks, How Not to Fall in Love or How Not to Marry a Jerk/Jerkette. So it's a fun curriculum, but it's really going to teach you as a single person. Maybe you're single and you're a young person. Maybe you're single because you are a widow. Maybe you're single because you've experienced a divorce. There's lots of reasons why people watch this event or attend this event. The reason that we do it is we want to teach you how to find the right person for you, but not only that, how to be the right person as well. So you need to learn that, I think, before you can find the right person. You have to learn how to be the right person. So that is what this is going to hopefully teach you today. Our speaker is Donna Shelfhout. So she and her husband Steve speak on, if you've ever been to our Love on the Beach event, she and Steve do that together. Donna also does this Love Thinks curriculum for us, and she has been on our curriculum committee for many years. So we are very thankful for Donna and for Steve and for all the volunteering they do for us at Great Marriages. I'm actually going to give you Donna's professional bio because Donna is a licensed professional counselor with a master's degree in clinical psychology. She has 25 years of experience working with teens and married couples. She is trained in EMDR and is very diverse in specialties. You'll have to ask her what EMDR is because I'm not sure. Her main passion is seeing clients find their own internal strengths while desensitizing past trauma. She utilizes various modalities to empower clients to make great success in the therapy process. Donna serves in a local youth group, offers Christian counseling, and is well-versed in solutions-focused therapy. She also offers marriage and family therapy, grief therapy, and behavioral therapy. She has taught parenting classes, provided psychoeducation in regards to diagnosis, and has trauma training. She comes from a military family background and has experience in offering therapy to soldiers and their families. She works with all ages and offers therapy for various diagnoses. So help me welcome Donna Shelfhout and enjoy.
Thank you, Jocelyn. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that. Well, today what we're going to do is we are going to talk about the No Jerks curriculum, and I'm going to try to shorten it to 45 minutes to an hour possibly. There is a lot of material here, so if you decide that you would like to have more material than what we share today, definitely give a call to Great Marriages and let us know that you would like to have maybe that class offered for a group at your church or at a community center near you or even at the college that you're at. We've done it in a couple of different ways at different places, so we do have that available to you. The basic gist of this class is really how to pick a partner and how to pick a partner that is going to be compatible with you, but also how to be that compatible partner so that you're feeding into the relationship in a good way and they are feeding into the relationship in a good way. So it starts off really talking about 5 key words, and I'm going to give those to you now. They are know, trust, rely, commit, and touch. And we're going to cover a lot of that today in what we talk about as far as how to be a good partner and what that looks like in the growing process. If you jump too quick to the relying or the touch, it can damage the rest of the relationship. And so that makes it really difficult when you're trying to blend with somebody. So you should have a packet of papers in front of you if you signed up for the class. And so we're just going to start by going through some of what it talks about on the PIC program. What we do is we go through analyzing what it means to be a jerk or a jerkette. We talk about how to look for that partner, what characteristics you're looking for, what attracts you to each other, what kind of things are you looking for when you're looking for a relationship, and then looking at some past things, family background. What are some examples of other relationships that you've been in and that the other person has been in? some different skills that you might have or that you might need to work on, like boundaries, or like being able to take things slow when you're getting to know each other and not just jumping into a physical part of a relationship. So I want to take a few minutes and just focus on page 7 here. It talks a lot about getting to know someone before you trust that person. And the example I like to use with this is, we just met. If I offered to take your child out for ice cream, would you trust me to do that? You know that I'm a Christian. You know that I teach classes. You know I'm a therapist, but still, you don't know me. You probably wouldn't trust me to take your child. So here's where we kind of take that step back and go, if I wouldn't trust a stranger to touch my child, take my child anywhere, why would I trust a stranger to be part of all of my life if I don't know them? Make sense? So now when we look at this, we can say it's one thing to get to know somebody. It's a next step to trust that person. It's even further steps to rely on that person. And we have to test that theory a little bit. You know, we get to know each other and then we start to think we can trust each other. And then when we rely on each other, we start to do little things. You know, could you maybe do this for me, or could you be here for me? And if they're not there for you, then what does that do to your trust? But if they are there and you're able to say, you know what, step by step, I've learned to trust this person. So when we work on that know and then trust and then rely, well, now we can move into the next two, commitment and then finally touch. Now, everybody's boundaries are going to look a little different, and I have had questions through the years about, wait, does that mean that we can't hug, or that we can't hold hands, or we can't even kiss if we're not going to be like committed and headed for marriage, and how does that go? And here's what I will say to that. Everybody has their own sense of boundary. You know what a healthy boundary needs to look like for you. It might be tough to make it happen, but I will also say this. If you can step back far enough to protect yourself in the midst of this and not dive nose first into commitment without truly knowing that person, you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache. So then the question becomes, how much heartbreak do I want to have in my life? And how much would I rather trust that maybe there's a grander plan for my life? And if I can work on know, trust, rely, commit, and then move into touch, well, now we have a foundation, right? Because what happens, sometimes we jump in to all five. You know, we just met this person and we let them touch us in a way they probably shouldn't if we're not married. We commit to being one-on-one with them. We start relying on them and trusting them, and we don't even truly know who they are. So when we're looking at the Pick a Partner curriculum, what we're really looking at is, what are we doing? What are we doing that's a good thing, and what are we doing that might be sabotaging ourselves? If we don't set boundaries, then we can't be mad when somebody oversteps in that boundary. If we set a boundary and we say, you know what, we're not gonna kiss until we get married. I'm not gonna have sex if I'm not married. If we can set that boundary and we can let people know that up front, you know, I want you to know we're dating. However, I don't want to have sex if we're not going to be married. And so that sets that standard up front where you're going to know if they're serious about you, if they're serious about the relationship, or if they're just looking for something for the moment. Okay? All right, so we're going to move on to the next section here. I love the title of this chapter. Session 2 says, you cannot marry Jethro without getting the Clampetts. So if you're not familiar with the show, The Beverly Hillbillies, that's where this came from. And basically what it's saying is you're going to get the whole family. So when you're looking for a partner, you really want to be looking also beyond that person to his or her family. So when we look at this, we're looking at family background, childhood experiences, what kind of home they grew up in, any attitudes and actions that come out of their own conscience, some compatibility potential. You know, did you both grow up in a home that believed in God? Did you both grow up in a home that had screaming and fighting and violence? How are you going to have a home without that if that's what you're looking for? So there's so many dynamics that come into this when we start looking at that. We need to look at whether or not the other person, as well as myself, is willing to build some skills and be able to work on maintaining a relationship. And, you know, at this point, I like to mention that far too often today, people are dating and they're looking for that partner, but one thing will go wrong and they'll run. And then that becomes part of the list that we build that says, oh, I don't want this, and I don't want this, and I don't want this. Oh, and that happens, so now I don't want that. And pretty soon we start growing some calluses, and we don't really know what is okay to look for. However, we don't want to be by ourselves, right? We were created to have that fellowship, that partnership, that companionship. And so when we start looking at this area on this page, at the bottom, it talks about the head and the heart. This is precisely why we need to spend some time getting to know that person and not just jump in right away to trusting them or relying on them or even letting them touch us. We need to make sure that we're okay with everything that comes with that package before we walk into commitment. So then one of the other things on this page talks about the necessity of ingredients for effective personal change. I want to touch on that for a few minutes because honestly, we could take 1,000,000 classes, but if we don't take some of it to heart and realize the things in ourselves that need to change, and we keep blaming it on everybody else, then at the end of the day, we're going to keep getting what we got. So at some juncture, we have to be able to say, you know what, maybe there's some things about me that I need to reflect on before I start looking for another person that might have just as many problems as I do. Make sense? So here's what we look at. We look at agreeing to acknowledge when something is maybe not so much not right for us, but things we need to work on, things that we need to recognize. And sometimes, you guys, it's not stuff that you need to get rid of. Sometimes it's just the acknowledgement of being able to say, you know, me, for instance, I am a strong, independent woman, and I needed a partner that was going to be okay with that. And so when I met my husband, I did let him know, I would like to have you in my life, but I need you to be okay with the fact that I am independent, I run my own race, and I want you to be there beside me, but I don't need you to be everything in my life. Like, it's not, I don't need someone that wants that. And so when you're strong enough to let the other person know that up front, you know, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I would like to have, and then being okay if they go, you know what, that's just not where I am. Okay. And then move on. Part of that makes it hard is I know that a lot of people have said today, well, if I dismiss this one and that one and the other one, where am I going to find the right one? That becomes a huge question. There are several ways to do that. You know, there are groups within churches. There are single chat rooms online where you can chat with people face-to-face online, and not necessarily a dating website, but a chat room so that you can meet people the way people meet today. So that would be another thing as well. People meet through friends and family. You meet through people in your neighborhood. There's several different ways to be able to meet those people. The big encouragement here is to make sure that you know yourself well enough to know exactly what you're looking for before you go out there. All right. So we are going to look a little bit at page 16. And I talked a little bit about family dynamic. And page 16 is going to lay it out a little bit flat for you. It will let you know there's basically 4 different types of family dynamic. There's the authoritarian, there's territory, there's attention, and there's responsibility. So when you look down at the bottom, it gives you some examples of those for what it looks like when there's too much and what it looks like when there's too little. And ideally, you want to be a good balance in the middle, but we also know that not all families came from something like that. So we have to look at here and go, okay, on authority, what was my family like? Was my family more authoritarian, or were they way too permissive? And am I going to want somebody exact opposite of me that we might not agree all the time? Or am I looking for someone who is just like me and will be strong in the midst of that? Although sometimes when you're exactly the same, it still causes some stress and tension because you still don't always agree on the end. The next one is territory. You know, the big difference between the possessive and the enmeshed. Enmeshed would be more like, you know, I'm 30 years old and I can't do anything without mom and dad's permission. I'm still highly enmeshed. Or maybe my kids, you know, I'm in my 60s and my kids are completely enmeshed in my life and won't let me do anything. They maybe try to tell me what to do all the time. Whereas the possessive side of things is more, you're not allowed to do anything. And so, you know, you need to be really careful when you're surveying that ground too. Did you grow up in a home that was completely possessive, where dad controlled mom and would not let her have friends, or wouldn't let her go be part of a group? Or maybe it was the other way around. Mom controlled dad and he was, you know, go to work, come home, but not really allowed to have friends or go places. When you look at the next one down, it talks about attention. Do you want someone that grew up spoiled, or that grew up neglected? And honestly, those two create complete different dynamics for people. You know, if you grow up in a spoiled home, sometimes we see on that gamut that people don't know how to work. They want someone that's going to take care of them. They expect to be spoiled far into adult life, that everything just comes easy for them. And yet on the other side, with being neglected growing up, they hold tight to everything they get sometimes. And so just being careful, like, did you grow up in a well-balanced home, or are these things that we need to work on? And then the last section here, responsibility. Do you want somebody that's driven? Do you want somebody, are you okay with somebody that's lazy? You know, where do you fall in the middle of that yourself? Like, are you able to look at this and go, well, you know, I was kind of in the middle of a lot of it, but maybe I was authoritarian and driven, but I don't fit either side of the territory or the attention. We were right in the middle. So being able to know yourself is a big part of it before you can figure out what you're looking for. I will say this, there is no right or wrong answer to what to look for in the midst of family background. It's a matter of acknowledging what's there and deciding if you're willing to work on those areas with each other in the midst of moving forward. So, you know, there's a lot of people out there that would say, you know what, absolutely not. I will not be with an authoritarian because I don't want them telling me what to do. I don't want them barking at my kids, or, you know, whatever that looks like for you. It's okay to have those boundaries. It's really okay to say, you know what, I don't want to be with somebody lazy. I want adventure. I want to go outside and ride my bike and go for a walk by the water. I don't want to just sit at home all the time. And so it's good to know yourself in the midst of trying to find the other person you're looking for. And we will get in a few pages here to what exactly that is that you're looking for. But first, you really do need to understand what your family relationships look like. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at page 20. And what I want you to do is just take a few minutes. It's page 20 and 21. And I want you to rate your family. So you're going to look at this, and 1 through 5 is never, rarely, sometimes, often, and always. And it just gives you a couple of options for each one, but I want you to rate each one so that you kind of know where you are. And then you can do the scale to be able to know what your family is like. Okay, what you can do on the video is just hit pause, and then when you're ready to come back, you can come back and we'll carry on with discussion of that sheet. Okay? Okay, so as you're rating this sheet and you're looking at it, it talks about what feelings were like in your home. It talks about how you solved problems in your home, how your parents took care of things. What happened with discipline? Were you in a home where the rules stood, or were you in a home where the rules just really didn't matter and people got away with everything? On the back side of it, you know, it talks about trust and honesty. Was it important when you were growing up? Maybe not so much. As a family, this one's really important. There are enjoyable things we do together. We hardly do anything together. What part of that would you like to have in your family moving forward? Part of the reason that this is important is if we don't acknowledge what we would like to have and be proactive, we're going to follow the same cycles that we have had years after years after years. And if we want to break those cycles, then we have to realize something has to change in order for things to change, right? If you keep doing what you've been doing, you'll get what you always got. And so that makes it really hard, because what are we willing to change? And how are we going to make that change stick? So what I want you really to get out of page 20 and 21 is a deeper understanding of what your family is like, of what you want in a family, what you want to carry on and what you don't, and being able to move forward with that. The other piece of it is being able to put a voice to it. You know, I grew up in a tough home, and there was alcohol and there was some physical violence, and I decided early on, by the time I was probably 13 years old, I decided, you know what, I'm not having any of this in my home. If I ever have children, number one, they'll always have the same dad. I don't know how I'm going to make that happen in today's world, but they'll have the same dad, and I'm not going to have alcohol in my home, and you're not going to hit my kids. And so there were just some things that came out of that, you know, looking at those sheets 20 and 21 and going, okay, you know what, this is what I'm willing to settle for, and this is what I'm not going to settle for. And so you decide that up front, and then it's okay to hold your ground. And it's not that you have to be ugly about it. You just have to know your boundary, and you have to hold it. Hold the boundary. So now we're going to look a little bit at page 22. Page 22 talks about a healthy conscience and an unhealthy conscience. Oftentimes, I think we don't realize that we have both, that we can be unhealthy at times and we can be healthy at other times. So we really need to dig into this from a perspective of, I need to be real about myself. And for some people that can be really hard, because there's things on here that, like, you know, about halfway down the page, thoughtless when they're emotional. You know, when you get upset, do you stop to think before you speak? Or are you somebody that you get upset and kind of the verbal vomit thing happens, and we just say everything we don't want to say, and then we're like, oh my gosh, I can't take it back, it's already out there. So then that comes out of that unhealthy conscience. But then on the healthy side, if we can take a breath and we can think about the context and the ramifications, we can think before we speak, we can maybe walk away and go, you know what, I'm really upset right now, I need 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes, go cool off, pull yourself together, take a few big deep breaths. There's so much good in deep breathing. And then come back and be able to apologize and say, you know what, I'm sorry, this is how things should have been. I shouldn't have got so upset. You know, one of the others on here at the very top, it talks about being egocentric. Always thinking about yourself. The other side of that for a healthy conscience is thinking about other people, not just your own self. And so when we think about someone else's feelings, we're able to have that thought, oh, if I say that, they're really going to get upset. Does it really need to be said? Is this a hill worth dying on? Is this a battle that we really need to fight? Or can we just agree to disagree and put it down? And sometimes that's really hard for us to do because it's a safety mechanism. We need to defend ourselves. We need to fight to be right. And yet at what cost? Sometimes it costs us a relationship. So a little farther down, it talks about always being defensive. If we're always defensive, then we're not truly listening to the other person. And so, you know, when instead of being defensive, we can try to take some criticism and grow through it. And tell you, for someone who doesn't love criticism, it can be really difficult to be able to say, okay, you know what? Maybe this is true and I need to work on it. If it is true, then I need to fix it. If it's not true, then we just need to work through it. We need to be able to get to, okay, what made you feel that way? Why would you assume that about me? Or why would you say that about me? But being able to be open enough to say, okay, this is clearly a concern and we need to talk about it. So then being able to work from there. Down at the bottom, one of the nice ones on healthy conscience enjoys giving as well as receiving. This is very important if you're going to have a healthy relationship. The only way that we're going to be able to have a truly healthy relationship is if we're able to do both, give and take. And so there's got to be that good balance. So if you're someone that loves to give, it can be difficult to step back and accept the fact that somebody is giving to you and learn to be that receiver as well as the giver. Because what that's going to do is it's going to bring blessing on both sides. So then you're able to do that for each other. At the very bottom, it says, tends to be unconcerned with actions when there is no threat of being caught. If they're not concerned about their actions, that speaks volumes. Because the other side of that, in the healthy conscience, they work to be consistent with their actions matching their character. And so here's the thing. When we don't care about consequences, we might get ourselves in trouble doing some crazy things. And that doesn't necessarily just mean like tickets or jail or trouble like that, but it causes trouble in the relationship when we don't acknowledge that fighting and yelling might lead to the consequence of a lost relationship, or that a disagreement might result in some distance in the relationship. And so we need to be careful that we're not only making some good choices in the midst of how we talk to each other and how we treat each other, but that we're able to do it in such a way that the healthy conscience shines through and not necessarily the unhealthy conscience. So I want you to pause the video again for a moment, and I want you to take a few minutes to look at both the unhealthy and the healthy, and I want you to utilize the lines down at the bottom. On each one, write one or two things that you know, maybe on the unhealthy conscience, this is what I need to work on. On the healthy conscience, this is where I'm really good. And so that way you kind of see that contrast of what you need to work on and what you're already pretty good at. All right? All right, so now the next two pages are kind of fun. They go hand in hand, but we're going to do them one at a time, so don't be peeking ahead if you haven't already. So the next sheet is page 29, and it talks about who am I? With this sheet, what we're going to do, I don't want you check marking things that you think you are or that you were 10 years ago or that you want to be again. I want you to be honest for right now in the moment, and you're going to check mark the things that tell who you are. And then up at the top right, it says my best qualities and what I need to work on. And so in the midst of what you check marked in these boxes, take your top 3 and put them as your best qualities, and maybe take 3 of them that you know you need to work on, that you would say, you know what, if I improved in these areas, I could be a better partner myself. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and take a minute to go through this sheet and figure out who you are. Okay, for some of you, that might have been a little more difficult than you thought it was going to be, reading through here and wondering, am I? I know for me, the first time I went through this list, I thought, oh, I don't know. Like, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about ourselves. So I think sometimes, you know, when we sit down and we really reflect on our character, our interests, our talents, our beliefs, our goals, when we take time to reflect on those things, we learn a little bit about ourselves. And even in the midst of just everyday life, not even in the midst of just trying to find a partner, but being able to know yourself. You know, what is it that you like, and are you actively doing all those things? So being able to look through there. If we were live in person, I'd ask you to talk about your best qualities and what you need to work on, and then offer up some encouragement as to how to meet those needs. Where we're recorded, what I'd like you to do is just kind of make a note off to the side for the things that you need to work on, and pick 1 or 2 ways that you might be able to make that happen over the course of the week. So let's say I'm not flexible. If that's one of the things you need to work on is flexibility, what's one way this week that I could be flexible? And maybe it would be, you know what, if a friend needs me, I'll cancel something to go do that, or I'll sacrifice my time to go help my friend. Whatever that needs to look like, finding ways to be flexible. And then maybe, you know, if it's pessimistic, what is one thing this week I could be optimistic about? Instead of being upset that it rained, maybe, you know what, it's going to help the flowers grow. So let's find a positive opposite. So being able to brainstorm some of those ways that, you know, we don't just write it down and say, I need to work on this, but how do I work on it? What way do I make that happen? And so in looking at that, having a plan to move forward. I hope that makes sense. We are now going to look at the attractions sheet. And what I want you to do with the attractions worksheet, page 30, is I want you to truly reflect for a few minutes and just pick the things that you are attracted to. It says the top 10. You're going to pick your top 10 things that, if I'm looking for a partner, these are the 10 things that I really want them to have. And really contemplate this page for a few minutes, deciding what is most important to me. Is it important that they're ethical? Do I need them to be popular? Do I want them to be trustworthy? Do they need to have high energy? What type of person should I be looking for? And what 10 qualities do I want them to have? So once again, I'm going to have you pause the video and take a few minutes to fill out this worksheet. All right. So I know for some people along the way, this sheet is really hard because we look at it and we think, man, I don't know if I could really find a person that has all 10 of what I'm looking for. Is it okay to label them 1 through 5? Certainly. It's also okay to look at the sheet and go, you know what? I really found 15 things that I need to have in a partner. And we need to have faith that if that's what we're looking for, we'll find that. We also need to be careful too, though, that we're not being, I don't want to say overly critical, but that we're not being super critical in judging the people that cross our path, but that we're open to getting to know them and seeing beyond the surface. So, you know, at first glance, we might look at this sheet and go, wow, all of this is really important. But is it? It's to me, it's not important that they're popular. I don't know how important it is for me that they would be the same culture. I think that there's a lot of diversity that could be a good thing. Unique, I don't know that that would be important to me. So when you're looking at this list, you're really wanting to survey what is it that hits that top 5 or top 10 that are absolutes. Like, I want them to be ethical. I want them to be affectionate and adventurous. Like, what are those things that really catch your eye so that when you're moving forward, you have an idea of what you're paying attention to and what you're looking for in that person. All right, the next couple of pages here are going to be more in line with if you're already in a relationship. And so these are things to keep tucked in your hat in case you need them down the road. There is a relationship health inventory in here. This is pages 31 and 32, excuse me. For the relationship inventory, what you're going to do is basically just look at this first page, 31, and you're going to answer these questions. I feel misunderstood in this relationship. If that's a 5, you might be having some struggles with communication. I feel belittled or put down. You might be having some struggles with respect. So there are some things on here that it's just going to give you an idea of where you are in the midst of that relationship. And that's not to say that if you answer 5 on 2, 3, 4 of these questions that your relationship is doomed. Please don't hear that. However, if you're answering 5 to some of these things and you're already in a relationship, then the question would be, are you willing to work on those things together to resolve them, to come to a point of saying, well, maybe we are being a little jerky to each other, or maybe, by the standards of what the curriculum is laid out, we're not really getting it good. We've had couples take this class that are dating, that are engaged, that just really want to make sure that they're in the right spot, and it comes to this relationship health inventory, and they have 3s, 4s, and 5s. Well, there are ways to work through those things. There are devotional books, there are self-help books. Great Marriages has a complete library of great resources that can help you in that arena. There's classes that you can take that would help you learn how to communicate better. There's just things that are out there that you could participate in that would make this more feasible for you to be able to work through it. On page 32, it kind of gives you good news, bad news. And it walks you through, like, you're either in great shape or your relationship could use a little help, or you're recognizing tremendous problems in the relationship and you're going to need some help moving forward. So it does say down at the bottom, take the proper action to address these patterns and alter the relationship so that changes can be made. I'm a firm believer that it's not necessary for every relationship we ever get into that has a little bit of bumps in the road that you just need to end it and run away. You do need to survey the ground. That being said, if it's an abusive relationship, by all means, go get some help and don't necessarily stay attached to that. If that's been maybe a pattern, then looking at these worksheets and trying to figure out, where did that pattern come from? How do I reverse that and change the direction of what I look for so that I can head in a good direction? So that's one of the tools we have in here, is that relationship inventory. The next one is a test of trust. And this one can be done early on in the relationship. It can be done a little farther down the road in the relationship. So it says at the top, when you fall in love with someone, there's a certain period that we look forward to in trying to learn to trust them. So the questions at the top, is this person genuine? Are they a good listener? Do they keep their promises? Do they display honesty? What we really want is for most of those top ones to be yes, and then below the line, we want those to be no. So if it's backwards and a lot of them up top are no and a lot of them down below are yes, those would be what we would consider red flags. We want to be careful not to just slam the door, but once again, being able to take that step back and go, okay, we're out of balance here. How do we fix it? What can we work on? What can be changed? And what do we need to leave well enough alone? So being able to improve a relationship takes work. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it takes a lot of work, and it takes both parties being willing to do the work that needs to be done. So when you're looking at something like this, you're able to figure out where are our strong points that we're able to say, yes, we're doing good on more than half of this. And then down at the bottom, if there's no's, being able to figure out how to turn that around. You know, if that person blames everybody, how do we talk to each other to be able to go, you know what, personal responsibility. We need to be able to have some personal responsibility in everything we do so that we're not always just pointing fingers, but we realize that when we point a finger, 3 more are pointing back at us. So we have to take ourselves into consideration too and be able to work through some of that. Once again, it doesn't mean that if it's all no's below the line that we need to ditch and run, but it does mean that there's some red flags and we need to be working on those things, and we need to decide, are these things that we want to work on? You know, down at the bottom, it says, does this person engage in regular drug and alcohol use? There's a lot of people that would not put up with that. So when we look at this test of trust, if I can't trust you to be sober and to take care of me and be there for me, just like I'm going to be sober and be there for you, then maybe this just isn't a good fit if we're not on the same page. Make sense? And not that I want to pick on the alcohol thing, but it's like that with some of the others too. If you're phony, I don't know. If you can't learn to be genuine, I'm not sure we would have a future. I would prefer to have someone that's genuine as opposed to phony. Make sense? I wouldn't want someone running away from problems. So down at the bottom where it says that, does this person run away from problems? If they don't know how to solve a problem productively, then where are they? Are we able to move past that to be able to say, you know what, it's a problem, how do we problem solve? We need to be able to do that to be a good functional partner in a relationship. All right, so the next page talks about, it kind of lists out marriage and IRA. And this is where if we were doing the full 6-hour Saturday class or even a longer 3-hour class at a church or a 2-hour session, we would dig more deeply into the principle of investing in the relationship, the principle of reciprocity between people, and the principle of accumulation within the relationship. But I really want to look a little bit at the marriage one too. There needs to be all of this: maturity, being adaptable, having relationship skills, being responsible, having that inner confidence to be able to have a voice for themselves, having good anger management. We're all going to get frustrated in this life. We all are. I've not met a person yet that would say, oh no, everything is sunflowers and roses. I never get upset. That's probably not true. They get upset, they just bottle it up, or they don't know how to handle it, so they ignore it. We need to have good anger management. We need to be gracious to each other. So, you know, maybe they are somebody that doesn't ever get mad. How are we going to handle that? Are we going to be okay with the fact that they don't let anything affect them, but then maybe they're just not equally as invested in those topics? What about it being emotionally stable? We want to make sure that there's some emotional stability there, that we're able to support one another, that we're able to be there for each other and have some emotional regulation in the midst of everyday life. All right, now we come to the end. I love this page here. It's actually 3 pages. This is 99 questions to answer in the premarital process. Now listen, please don't get overwhelmed by this. 99 questions is a lot, and I do not want you to take this 3 pages and go sit down with your significant other and go, okay, you know what, we're dating, you need to answer all 99 of these questions or we're not, we're not moving forward. Please don't do that. What I would encourage is that out of each section, there's family background, conscience, compatibility potential, relationship skills, and past relationship patterns. Maybe go through and pick the ones that you feel are really important to you, that you would say, you know what, I really need to know these answers. Or take them 5 questions at a time. If you want all 99 answers, every time you go on a date night, take 5 questions with you and just talk about those 5 so that you're not overwhelmed trying to answer all 99 questions. The other suggestion might be to start a journaling notebook between the 2 of you, wherein you write down a question, you answer it, give them the notebook, and let them answer it. And that way you have all your answers in one notebook between the 2 of you, and you can sit down and have some discussion as you read through each other's answers if you don't have time to sit and go through all of them at the same time. Couple of different suggestions there. The other thing you can do, I know in today's day and age, it's a lot about texting and chatting and social media. So what you could do is send a question to your boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, send them a question and then let them answer it, and then you answer it. So you're both answering and you both get some good knowledge out of that, okay? All right, I know I threw a lot of information at you in the last hour, and I would like to encourage you to be able to go back through the worksheets. If you feel like you have more questions, feel free to reach out to Great Marriages and they can put you in contact with me. If you would like the No Jerks information taught at one of your local area groups, just let us know and we will make that happen. Aside from that, everybody have a great day and be blessed. Bye.